Who's gonna swing first? We face each other in the moonlit corridor. Roa shows no signs of making the first move. The fact that he just stood by and quietly watched this whole time suggests he's sickeningly overconfident.
しかし、生きていたのは予想の外だったよ。
Roa addresses me as if nothing has happened. I take off my glasses and ready my knife.
死が見える人間というものは死から逃れる術に長けているということか。生命力の強い弱いの問題ではなく、まあ往生際が悪いとも言うがね。
I'm not the only one desperately clinging to life here. Both he and I are barely half alive, still shambling along after we failed to die properly the first time.
死から帰ってきた者は死というものを理解できる。私と君はその中でもさらに特別な能力があったケースだ。私はこの極点に到達するまで16回もの死を体験してきたが、そちらはただの一度だけか。正直才能の違いだろうな。もしその体に転生していたらどれほどの異能になったのか興味深くはある。
His cadence is prideful and his voice is grating. Simply listening to him speak is enough to give me a headache.
2つ聞くことがあって、1つだけ教えてやることがある。
With my thoughts swamped by this headache, I force the conversation toward its conclusion.
ほう、いいだろう。言ってみたまえ。
Confident in his absolute superiority, Roa views this as nothing more than a sideshow. His response is merely amused. I'm grateful. The more he acts like a human, the more furious with him I become. In fact, I'm already so angry that him seeming human isn't enough to give me pause. It's almost enough to make me laugh.
1つ目に聞くことが一番大事なんだけどさ。お前、なんでアルクエイドを殺した？
なぜもあるまい。自分の命が狙われているんだ。殺し返すのは当然だろう。もっとも私が欲しかったものは弱りきった姫君ではなかったが、今回の私なら最高の状態に仕上げた彼女を解体できた。だというの。その機会は失われた。一回の吸血鬼と変わらぬ神素で手に入れても意味はない。よって価値がないと判断し始末をつけた。こんな結果に終わったのは私にとっても残念だよ。
The enemy's lips twist into a grin. My head hurts. Now, take his life away, here and now. I can't stand the thought of him existing for even a second longer.
さて、それでこの後はどうする？まさかその体で私とやり合おうという腹でもあるまい。無様な抵抗ほど冷めるものはないぞ、殺人鬼。
He lays out the obvious truth. Dizziness grips me, and I slump to my knees on the floor. However, even if I no longer have the strength necessary to stand, I still have something I can fix my eyes on.
よせよせ。いくら私の死を見たところで触れられなければ意味はないし、その繊維は間違えている。
間違えている？
そうだ。君は私の敵にはなり得ない。性能の差を言っているのではない。殺害が可能か不可能かの例えでもない。君にはある一点において私を敵にする心理が欠けている。
Out of everything he said, those are the only words worthy of note. There's no sense in remembering anything he said up to this point, or anything he might say after. but I feel that the words of this man, just uttered, embody his own inner truth.
私は君の能力を高く買っている。どうもシキとしての人格は消えつつあるらしい。当のシキへの恨みを晴らした以上、今の私はシキ寄りではなく、ロア寄りということか。
He approaches me. With each echoing footstep, the silhouette of his body begins to melt. Am I hallucinating? I must be. He isn't actually melting. It's my vision that's starting to blur. Anger directed at him. Hatred directed at him. Anger directed at myself. Hatred directed at myself. These emotions blend together and come to a boil, the pressure threatening to blow the lid I've clamped over them clean off. Uh-oh. Ah, from the other side of my brain, the cries of cicadas are beckoning to me. Something is bubbling up from the pit within me. In other words, something dreadful is.
この力は素晴らしいだろう、シキ。喜んでいい。直視の魔眼を所持できる者は私たちぐらいのものだ。その気象能力をなくしてしまうのは惜しく、何より我々は同じもの。誰よりも互いを理解できるだろう。パートナーとしてこれほど心強い者はいまい。
仲間になれと言っているのか。
まさか仲間にしてやるんだよ、この私がな。君の意志なぞ知らない。そんな不純物はここで消す。安心しろ。その血を吸い上げ、魂まで略奪した後、私が君を何のためらいもなく死を行使できる存在に仕立て上げよ
う。It doesn't matter how far away from me he is anymore. All that matters is that he's in front of me. All that matters is that he's alive.
あと一つ、お前に見えているものは生き物だけの話だな。
当然だろう。生物でなければ命はない。命の源である箇所は生き物にしかありえない。
やっぱりガテンが言ったよ、吸血鬼。
I grip my knife. All vital activities from my extremities all the way to my core come to a standstill. My brain is filled with nothing but pain. But it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. I must go beyond. I mustn't hesitate. The woman who warned me of the consequences is no longer part of this world.
腑に落ちんな。最後の言葉にしては不相応だ。まあいい。おしゃべりは終わりにしよう。どこぞに隠れている教会の女の始末もある。
Oh, so you do know she's here. Cool.
喜べよ、シキ。私のしもべにした後の最初の相手を頼りにしているあの女だ。
Ah, what a stirring provocation. I'll play along, just as you wish. I have no morality or common sense left. I can't recall my own views, my own form. The flesh that composed myself has already rotted away. I've lost what it was that made me me. I have already forgotten what it means to be human. Domain expansion? What the fuck? man comes to a halt, his expression freezes. His body, no longer rooted in the foundation called life, stifles like a fetus.
待て、なんだこれ。
The world hasn't changed one bit. He has every advantage in this situation. What the fuck? What is going on? He can't make out anything that could possibly threaten him, at least not with the level of awareness he possesses.
なぜ私の足が震えている。
That's why the only thing reflected in his eyes is fear.
俺とお前が見ているものは違うよ、吸血鬼。
My body feels like it's on fire.
お前は命を見ているだけだ。死を理解していない。だから俺も殺せず、弱りきった女しか殺せない。
My brain glows white hot.
死が見えているのなら正気でなんかいられない。お前に分かるのは物を生かしている部分だけだ。死が見えるのならとても立ってなんていられない。
You could liken it to the moon's surface, a cold wasteland where everything is dead. Jesus, that face. To see the death of things is to be thrown into a world where everything is brittle and uncertain. Where everything is so fragile that the ground is next to insubstantial and the sky could fall at any moment.
何のことを言っている貴様。
Roa's voice is shaking. It's to be expected. He can't even begin to understand my monologue. What it all boils down to is this. Our eyes may bear a striking resemblance to one another, but they are fundamentally different.
やめろ。その目で私を見るな。
Roa's voice is laced with fear. He hit the nail on the head with what he said earlier. Humans are creatures that harbor an instinctive fear of the unknown.
1秒先にも世界すべてが死んでしまいそうな錯覚をお前は知らない。それが死を見るということだ。この目は得意げに語れるものじゃない。
Back then, even simply walking around was terrifying. If I hadn't met that person, I'd have gone crazy a long time ago.
それがお前の勘違いだ、吸血鬼。命と死は背中合わせでいるだけで永遠に顔を合わせることはないものだ。
その目で私を見るなと言っている。
I hear his footsteps approaching. He isn't able to pull off that lightning-fast strike of his. He's paying the price for using up too much of his power against Arcueid. If that's the case, then the outcome is already a foregone conclusion.
教えてやる。これが物を殺すということだ。
Hey, he said the thing. I can plunge my knife down far faster than he can reach me. Oh shit. He's destroying the whole school? The instant I do, the entire walkway lets out a rumbling groan of resentment and disintegrates. Even Roa's scream is drowned out by the sound of the collapsing rubble. The walkway has been killed on the thrust and the truest sense of the word. Deprived of its meaning, the entire mass immediately crumbles and comes crashing down. Caught in the midst of the collapsing corridor, Roa plummets to the ground, battered by the falling rubble. An unnatural collapse. The part of the walkway between me and the opposing school building has crumbled away as though it had been made of an entirely different material to the surrounding building. Pushing through the pain in my head and the numbness of my body, I head for the stairs. Under the moonlight, the courtyard had been transformed into a sea of rubble. From deep within, I can hear something clattering around as it moves. How pathetically he clings to life. His body is on the verge of collapsing, but he drags himself up and over the heaps of rubble. It's as though the lower half of Rolla's body doesn't even exist. That part of him no longer regenerates, almost like it's been doomed to a fate of non-existence. Even so, the upper half of his body manages to crawl out from under the rubble. He's still moving around as though the death of his body doesn't even affect him. His life force is truly something to be admired. He writes, drenched in a pool of his own blood. Is he going to reconstruct himself? Surely he will. I see. He isn't able to do that again just yet. If he can't resurrect or regenerate, then he ought to be able to make do by crafting a stand-in. What a vampire-like notion. I'm sure that in a few minutes he'd be able to construct himself a prosthetic to temporarily take the place of his lower body. Picking my way across the rubble, I walk over to him. He raises his head and glares at me. His eyes are so brimming with hatred that it feels as though it could all come spilling out at any moment. A hateful cry of resentment. His lower body begins to rapidly grow back. The blood that had soaked the rubble around us is absorbed back into his body, as though I were watching a tape being rewound. Putting my thoughts into words, I relax my grip on the knife. His point is slightly to the right of his heart. I plunge the blade in with a soft thud. It feels like cutting through paper. The sensation of death is not particularly dull, but nor is it all that special. Damn, he really did the thing that Sonic did to that robot when he just kicked him very slightly and then bam, dead. He gasps lightly. This is a man who has experienced death many times, even if only imperfectly. He understands this feeling better than most people.
恐ろしくはないだろう。お前にとっては馴染んだ道だ。違うところがあるとすれば、一つだけ。今度は、帰ってこられない。
Get him. God damn, Shiki. Whole badass. I pull out my knife and turn away. His life is already over. It came to an end swifter and easier than you could close your eyes. So is that really it? My consciousness begins to slip away. If my body is at its limit, then my mind is already long past it. I think Arcueid warned me about this, about how I shouldn't look too closely at death, about how if I pushed myself too hard, the blood vessels in my brain would burn out, or something like that. None of that matters anymore. If I was prepared to end up like this, if I was this prepared to turn into a cripple, I should have killed Roa much sooner. Because if I had, then she'd still be alive right now. I've fallen. I'm lying in a heap on the ground. I feel a pain in my ankle. When I look back, I see a monster, crawling only using his right arm. Uh-oh. He slowly drags himself on top of my fallen body. He wraps his blood-soaked arm around my neck.
える。なぜどうやって私の殺し
Jesus. Jesus. He opens his knife-like mouth, readying himself to bite into my throat.
私とお前はつながっている。お前移ればまだ存在の鎖は切れない。
This is some top-tier voice acting right here. His fangs plunge into my throat. Hey, Seal. He's gone. Roa's body is torn to pieces in an instant.
危ない危ない。
Hey, that's what you said. Exactly what you said when you hit the train. There in front of me stands Senpai, slightly out of breath, a collection of blades grasped in her hand.
とまあ、これでこの人を殺したのは私ですね。
I don't entirely understand what Senpai is trying to do here.
ですからロアを殺したのは私です。
I mean, kinda technically. You did the most work, but you know, whatever.
その功績も責任もすべて私にあります。あなたになんてただの一つもあげません。なので遠野くんは手ぶらで何もできなかったといじけて帰っちゃってください。
Senpai places her hands on her hips as she bosses me around. That's really unfair. Just when I thought I'd never be able to smile again, she makes me crack a bitter smile.
先輩、それ詭弁だよ。
詭弁でしょうか。でも優しい嘘ならそれもいいと思います。たとえ偽善でもなんとなく救いがありそうじゃないですか。
Those words seem familiar. They remind me a lot of what Arcueid said to me, back when I told her that I hated talking about what ifs.
そうだね。なんとなくどこか救いが残っているのかもしれないなら。
Something like that really would be wonderful.
今は体の問題が先でした。大丈夫ですか、遠野くん。噛まれませんでした？
Senpai tends to my fallen body. My consciousness fades. My brain signals that it can't take anymore, and that it needs to rest.
遠野くんってば。
It gradually grows further away. My self-condemnation, my regret, the headache tormenting my brain, the warmth that remains in my hands, all of it. It all slips away like a receding fever. I have a memory of staring up at this same moon long ago. With my eyes still open, my consciousness shuts down completely. Like a monitor that's been switched off, it vanishes without even a trace of a lingering afterimage. So, what now?